Welcome to the Mental Insights Podcast, a conversation aimed at understanding all sides of mental health, addiction recovery, and homelessness. Each interview will include one's personal experiences and insights, or an expert's advice and knowledge within one of these fields. The goal is to promote awareness, guidance, and support for anyone who is affected by these challenges. Thank you all for listening. Welcome to the Mental Insights Podcast. This is your host, Brendan.cutuli, and we're here today for Season 2, Episode number 24, with Linda Balliro. In the previous episode, we spoke about singing and the arts and developing calmness and sensory awareness. Within this part of the episode, we're going to be speaking about what role survival instincts can play in skill development. Linda is a private vocal consultant, and if you haven't tuned into the previous episode, you can listen more about how music and the arts can develop calmness and sensory awareness. But for now, Linda, thank you for being back here and sharing your insights with my guests.
I'm happy to be here.
And then in speaking in terms of the skills that can be developed, and first in terms of development and what is essential, do you want to speak about what skills are key in terms of singing and the arts? What skills do we want to develop in terms of having within that field in general?
hmm Yeah, so being a musician or being a singer or being an athlete or any kind of um, high level, high performance skill that you want to use to share your message out in the world requires a lot of training and a lot of practice to be effective. So we can share our message in the world by just doing what we do every day and just hollering. And there are some actual singers that are like that. Like Tom Petty is like that. He's not a trained singer. He's self-practiced musician and he's able to communicate in a very authentic way. But in the most of the arts that we have today in this Western culture require us to do things that are above and beyond what we would do naturally. Ballet, dance, the human body wasn't made to do these things. And so how we have to train in very specific ways and master these skills at a much higher level than we would for normal everyday life. So why is this valuable and why is this important? So this became a really important question for me over the years, because over the years of my life of singing and performing, wondering why do we do this? Why do we want to do this? Why do we need to do it or feel like we need to do it? And why are we practicing so much? And why do we keep practicing and never get bored? And we can just do this over and over again for many, many years. So it sent me down this path of studying those issues in the neuroscience. And one of the first things that I found out when I started studying cognition for singing and music is that human beings are very special for their ability to make complex vocalizations. That means singing things like Bach with all the notes, singing riffs and R&B riffs like we heard Mariah Carey and other famous singers do. This is really unique in the animal kingdom. In fact, the only other species that does it is birds. And that's really strange. How can we have something in common with birds like that? There are lots of animals that sing. Almost all of them do, but they don't have complex vocalizations. They have single notes or a few beautiful notes, but they don't have this ability to do pitch and rhythm like we do. And birds beat us out. Birds are much further along the evolutionary track than we are. Okay, so now I found out birds and humans. What? Why? Well, we start investigating evolution and taking a look back on where we came from and what we needed to become the species who's at the top of the food chain, more or less, except for sharks, maybe. But we're more or less at the top of the food chain. How did we get here when we don't have these things? We don't have the teeth like sharks. We don't have claws. We don't have fur. There are lots of animals that can kill us and take care of us instantly, and we would have no ability to fight back with them. How did we get here? Well, we got here because of our voices, and our voices evolved to allow us to survive against other predators. Humans descended from the trees. Before we were human, our ancient ancestors were living in trees those animals came down from the trees, and those were the first early species of that became human. So now they come down from the trees in the African savanna, and they don't have fur, and they don't have teeth, and they don't have claws. And there are a lot of other animals who do. So how did they survive? Well, they survived by bonding together and using their voices. If you have many, many humanoid people who humanoids who come together and yell really loud, the tiger is going to go away. And this is how humans survived in an environment they were not physically equipped to do it. And the more dangerous the situation for survival, the more our voices developed and evolved to be able to put up with those situations. We evolved to use our voices for finding our tribe, for staying together as a unit. We used our voices to communicate danger to our tribe, to communicate important things about happy things, finding food, all these survival needs. That was the use of our voices. Now, how have we figured this out since we can't go back and ask those humanoids or even observe them? We have figured it out by observing birds, and because some of this behavior still exists today. I had a really strange experience that about 6 months ago that that was very surreal for me because it was like in the middle of it, I was like, oh my God, this is what I talked about in my book. I was sleeping and I live in a townhouse in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I have a kitchen door goes to the outside. And in the middle of the night, somebody came in the door. I had not locked it. So I was sleeping, but I heard the kitchen door open and I jumped out of bed and I see this intruder in the doorway of my kitchen. So I started screaming immediately and I was screaming at him to get out. And I was screaming so much that he left. And the sounds that came out of my voice I had never heard before. And I've been singing and using my voice for 40 odd years at least. They were non-human sounds. I sounded like some combination of a pit bull and a bear and screaming at him to get out, get out, get out, which he did. And right afterwards, I said, oh, this is just what I talk about in the book. So we still do it. And there's another example from my book of this happening in Rwanda. The United Nations had created a refugee camp in Rwanda, and the camp was along the path, the migratory path of elephants. So the elephants had been traversing this migratory path for thousands of years, and the UN puts a refugee camp right in the middle of this path, without knowing, of course. So what happens? Everybody's asleep at night. The elephants just come trotting through the camp. They don't know. They've been doing this for thousands of years. They don't even know they're doing it. It's automatic. And they would unfortunately trample people and things, and it was quite bad when it first happened because nobody was expecting it. But as soon as they realized what was going on, the members of the camp joined forces and started keeping watch. So one person would keep watch all night long, or they'd take shifts, whatever, and they'd use their voices. So as soon as somebody gave the alarm that an elephant was coming or a train of elephants was coming, everybody would get out and they would start screaming. And they would lead the elephant out of the camp with their voices. And this is a great story. You can look it up. It's on NPR. I think it was NPR, but it's one of the resources in my book, so you can read the original story. And when the UN started working on this, they then developed better ways with alarms systems so that people didn't have to get up and scream every night. But the voices of the people in the camp made the elephant move and go in another direction. So there was no way any human was going to control what a wild elephant did, but yet they were able to do that with their voices. So those are some modern examples that show how this developed. And observing birds, they use their voices that way. I have a lot of bird stories too, so that could take another hour, so I won't go on too much. But the birds use their voices to find each other in the sky. So there's you don't have any landmarks in the sky, right? So they sing and they find each other. Even when they can't see each other, they know where they are. So this developed very an evolutionary way, an ability to use our voices with a lot of rhythm and pitch and changes so that it could be very effective when we needed to survive. So what does this mean for our daily lives today? It means that survival skills, survival tools are very important. So we began using our voices for very important things like surviving, tiger attacks, finding food, staying with our tribe so we don't freeze to death or die alone. Uh, and all of these skills that our voice evolved for are life and death skills. So when we're using our voice today, we're still connected to that. Our DNA has not changed that much. And we are still very much connected to our instincts. And I just want to say, I'll just read very quickly. I'm going to just say this very quickly, is hoping that I can see it. A woman who is a cognitive scientist at the University of Southern California, her name is Mary Helen Imrodino Young. She's very famous for her work in cognition and emotions, and I highly recommend that you check out any of her work on the subject of cognition and emotions because it's incredible. But she says, if there's one thing that neuroscience is teaching us about the human mind, it is the deep interdependence between our physiological survival mechanisms, our mental states, our embodied and emotional experiences, and our cultural creations. Balliro integrates these, so she talks about that for my book, how I integrate that. But it is integrated. They are not separate things. We did these things, we developed this ability to do these things to survive. The very first piece of artwork that we have found that humans made is a sculpture. And it's the oldest relic we have in the history of humans that seems to be art and not to be like a tool for eating or killing something. It's a picture of a woman who's kind of chubby and round, and it was a fertility tool. So it's a piece of art because it doesn't have an actual physical use. It's not a knife or a tool. It's not a tool. It looks like art, but the reason for it was fertility, to help somebody have more babies, survival. So we make things that are important to us to survival. So one more connection, the final connection I'll make to all of this is we go back to mastery of our skills, training. Why do we train? Why do we do so many scales? Why do we practice for years and perfect our skills? Because the better we are, the higher our chance of survival. So if you look at birds today, the birds that are the most successful, the boy birds that get the girl, are the ones that are their best singers. They're the ones that are the best at building the houses. They are the ones, we talk about survival of the fittest. Well, it goes even further than that. The ones who survive are the ones who are the best at whatever they do. So humans are compelled to master skills. And we've lost that in our modern culture. So it's no longer given emphasis because we actually don't need it. It's like you don't need to sing well to survive today. You don't need to do your voice perfectly. You can never sing and never open your mouth and just live a happy life just fine. But really, are you? Because we're not thriving in a way that we could be if we were uh, following these natural instincts. So that's why we master things, and that's why mastering skills can improve the quality of your life and help you to thrive as a human being. It's what we do. It's what we do.
Absolutely. And, some of these survival instincts aren't necessarily some things in which that you could practice and become a master at unless
Mhm.
you're in that position, unless you're in a given scenario in which, you can work on that type of role. And in terms of how we've become modern today, how we don't have, the necessary, situations in such that we need to use our survival instincts, and not everybody is in the same given scenario of the way that they can use those instincts in a given situation. As you even stated that someone entered your home, and not everybody is necessarily going to experience something similar or be at a better scenario to be able to even use their voice to create some sense of security and protect yourself. And within that, when you are trying to practice some things, even if it is your voice skills in terms of providing some sense of security in that measure, in what ways can someone try to train or practice their skills, even if it's their voice, to benefit themselves in a survival instincts manner? Because not everybody can train their survival instincts on a daily basis. And in what ways could we do that effectively, given that we are in a more modern society today?
Master a skill. Take on a skill and become really good at it. And it can suit your personality and your needs and your abilities to any degree you want. So again, because we don't have to worry about survival, you don't have to be the best singer on the planet. But if you develop your skills to a high level for yourself, you don't even necessarily have to do it for other people, although it's good to do that too. You are engaging an aspect of your biology and neurology that is really deeply ingrained in us. And when people don't master a skill, they start to be unhappy, and they start to have more stress and more depression because we're not thriving. We can survive. It's no problem. We can get a job. We can go to the office every day, and we can live, and we can have a nice life, and everything is okay. But it's really not okay. And that's what people are finding out. And that's one of the things we've learned from this shutdown. There's the COVID, the virus, it's very tragic, and there's so many horrible things that people have had to endure. But on the other side of it, those who are who've not been hit by that tragedy, but are just living their lives as best they can, are actually feeling like they have a better quality of life, even though they can't go out and have fun, and they can't get the relaxation from a vacation. They're feeling less of the rat race, and they're feeling more, they have more sensory awareness, and they're feeling more like they have time to work on things. It's like, oh, well, I can really work out and really focus on that. Oh, I can learn a new skill. And people are doing things, and they're feeling better. And they're feeling better because it's in our instincts to master something, to become really good at something. It can be the smallest little thing. You can be a really good cook. You can be really good at arranging the furniture in your house. But when you take something to that level of, let me get really good at this, you start to feel better about every aspect of your life, and you start to become a more confident person because you're improving your ability to survive or to thrive.
Absolutely. And, in comparison of, as we're speaking about, whether it's modern day or whether it's back when these survival instincts were given into place, is, in your own perspective, in terms of what kind of the skills have transitioned from then until now, is there a good sense in which we do practice some of the skills that ground us more to a sense within our survival instincts? So whether it's, in the sense of whether it's going out and, warming yourselves out in nature, or whether it's just getting out into a walk, being in nature, more of these kind of, skills in which you're doing in terms of, in comparison to past times where it's, basically back then they only really had a few things in order for them to really survive. They needed to, find warmth, they needed to find food, and they needed to protect themselves from other types of animals and such that could bring about challenges. And nowadays obviously there is much more challenges in which you can find other ways, but it can also be easier in order to get some of those things. So there's new challenges in a new way. And what can these survival instincts play in which, maybe helping the challenges that we do face today, and bringing about a new perspective in terms of the way we look at survival instincts in a more modern society.
Hmm. I really think it's learn a new skill. Is that what you're asking? It's like you can. I would definitely be an advocate of doing anything in nature. So taking up some hobby or some interest that you have outdoors is to me it's the best, because we are meant to be in connection with things outdoors. I started planting during this shutdown. I decided that I wanted to learn how to make vegetable plants from seed, which I've never done before. And I've killed every plant I've ever tried to put in my house my entire life. So now at this age, I decide I'm going to plant things from seed. So I went a little bit crazy, and I studied it all. I researched it all, and I got the seeds, and I got the things I needed, and I put it all together. And I now have this huge garden here in the suburbs of Massachusetts, and I have about 30 tomato plants and 14 broccoli plants that the bunnies have eaten a little bit. So I just picked that up. But as I started to get really good at it, and I started to get to really understand it, I started to relax more. And I wasn't even involved in what was happening in the news as much. I keep informed, but I wasn't drawn in or pulled in by the negative things that are happening in the world. And I just go out in the morning and I take care of all the plants, and it just starts me on my day. And this is a great example of a skill set that changes your emotional conditions, changes your emotional experience in your connection with your daily life. And so it can be anything, though. So if somebody else doesn't have the connection to do something like that, or they're not drawn to it, it can be anything that you're drawn to. And you can do it in a one-bedroom apartment in the city. You can find a new skill that you can master, that you can do. It doesn't have to have a big important meaning in the world, because we don't need that. What we need is us to develop ourselves so that we can work on something and become really good at it for our own ability to feel like we're thriving. And that just doing that one thing bleeds over into every other aspect of your life.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. And with, this question that I like to ask my guests, it kind of, brings about many ways in which you educated yourself, and as well how you're educating other people, and, what your hopes are in order to, take this next step moving forward in the future. And with, this being said, it's a hypothetical question. It's a hypothetical scenario in which that you're provided, resources, basically a sum of money in which you can allocate towards resources in order to help others in, a field of your choice that you want to create change within our society today, wherever you think that there is a need for people to be provided resources, be helped out in whatever scenario it may be. And, I want to offer this time for you to share where you'd allocate these resources. Where would you help others in terms of people who are facing challenges today, and why that would be something of your choosing in order to help uplift these people?
Well, I will definitely have to put a sum of money into singing and doing music, because I am a believer that that is the strongest and the fastest way to develop sensory awareness. And that when you develop your sensory awareness skills through mastery of some skill, you affect your life in so many ways: your ability to make decisions, your choices, how you feel and experience the world, what your general emotional state is. And I think that if we had a stronger sensory awareness in this country, we wouldn't have so much political division, and we wouldn't have problems with climate change, because we would be aware of what's going on. We'd be in the moment of feeling it. But my real dream is that we can use this time in this shift that we have in our culture for education. And it can be a general education, because I think any kind of education is going to lift people out of poverty and lift people also into emotional experience that um, is based on their actual experience and not based on some fears or belief systems. So right now, many people in Western cultures are operating on beliefs and fears, and those fears are creating limiting beliefs, and the beliefs become like truths, and they're just beliefs, they're not truths. And so the more we have education for everybody equally, the more people can get away from following their belief systems or being dictated, having their lives dictated by their fears. They're more dictated by what their emotional experience is in the moment, and sensory awareness. We have, so much of the divisions that we have in this country are because of the lack of education, or the inconsistent education, the poor quality education that varies so widely throughout the country. And if during this time, when we have to redo everything, if the government could invest the money in education, and so that rural areas, urban areas, people of color, uh, people from all walks of life were getting the same quality of education, that I think we would raise the consciousness of everybody, and also by doing that, change the emotional experience.
Wonderful. It's certainly a great answer, and it's something that hopefully we can move towards and create that change within our society. So, within these conversations, I think there was some great, insights that you were able to bring from your own experiences and from the work that you do, Linda. So I want to thank you for taking this time to be on the Mental Insights podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to meet you and see the work that you're doing, because I think it's so valuable to reach people with these kinds of conversations. You have a wide variety of guests, and I'm sure you're helping a lot of people.
I greatly appreciate that, Linda. It's such a pleasure to connect with you and be able to, continuing these great conversations that we need to have, that we need to, bring the awareness to a greater light in which many of the challenges that people are facing today. So, thank you again for those kind words, and thank you all for listening again to this episode. And please be sure to tune in to the previous episode with Linda Balliro if you haven't listened to already. So thank you all again, and please be sure to let us know what you thought of these episodes, and let us know what you'd like to hear more in the following episodes to come. So again, this was your host, Brendan Cutuli, and this was season 2, episode number 24. Thank you all for listening to today's episode of the Mental Insights podcast. Make sure to reach out to today's guest or myself if you need any advice, guidance, or support in your life today. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and review to this podcast so we know what you thought of this episode. I look forward to being in touch with you all in the next episode. I hope you all have a wonderful day.